councillors, staff, the media, all those who are listening at home to the council meeting on Wednesday the 3rd of September. I'll call for apologies, and I have one. It's from Councillor Lovett. She's unwell at the moment. So move for a seconder for them. Councillor Todd and Braham. All in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you. Extraordinary business, I know I've done. Declarations of interest in today's agenda. All right. Confirmation of the minutes, and they're on page 3. And we're looking for the accuracy there. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Moving a seconder, Councillor Cameron and Councillor McMillan. Take those minutes taken as read and confirmed. All in favour, please say aye. Carried. And moving on to page 7, which is the receipt of the Methven Community Board meeting held on the 11th of August, recently. Moving a seconder that we receive those minutes. Councillor Cameron, Councillor Hooper. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried. Anything to discuss in those minutes?
I'd like to ask a question if I can.
Yep.
Is that timing right?
Yes.
The Methven CBD lighting project that was due to be completed and has not yet happened. Can we have some insight as to what's caused the delay there?
Who can we go to there? Councillor McMillan, you're our board member, but there's staff who attend those meetings. Can you answer this? No. All right. Neil?
Yeah, the lighting has been completed, but there have been some issues with it, so they're working on it, on some of the issues. Apparently they're not as they were expected in terms of brightness, and there's been a few details, but the installation has been done, but subject to some extra work.
Can I ask an additional question?
Yep.
So it's been done, and is it still on budget?
Yes, I believe so.
Thank you.
No further questions on the Methven Community Board minutes? No, we'll move on to item number 6, which is the adoption of the Water Races Bylaw 2025. Welcome, Richard. And Mark and Tony. Anything further to add to your report?
Not to add to the report, Mayor Brown, but just to recap that this process began with the decision to consult on a new bylaw that would substantially roll over the existing bylaw, and the reason for that was that we wanted to retain the tools we needed to manage our network through to the completion of the stockwater exit process. And in that substantial rollover, we would also correct some minor errors in the bylaw, and certainly we wanted to avoid any negative effects on the stockwater exit process. We received 2 submissions. They were considered recently at a workshop. The bylaw has been amended. I think it's on page 10, the explanatory note, 10 of the agenda, or 9 or 10 of the agenda, to capture what I understood from the workshop. Beyond that, we're recommending that the bylaw be adopted, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Richard. Questions, councillors?
I'll ask a question.
Councillor Cameron?
In the bylaw, it's got 6 metre, leave 6 metres for cleaning of the race. Is that it's highlighted in our notes? Is that a change from the original, or is that all existing?
So that was already the requirement in the bylaw.
Yeah. Is that reasonable? I mean, that would be for if it's on farmers' own land, they're responsible for cleaning it. It's best they're responsible for cleaning it. So, is 6 metres a reasonable amount? It seems a lot. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Off
Mr
scope,
Mayor,
out of
I just
scope.
don't think that's a question for the officer to answer. If you want to debate the 6 metres as being reasonable, that's a legitimate matter for the council to consider, but I don't think asking the officer is 6 metres reasonable quite the right.
Yeah, it's been workshopped, and the time to ask if 6 metres would have been answered way back then. But you can certainly debate if you think it's too much. You could alter if you wished, when we get to debate mode. No further questions? No, thank you. Move and a seconder. Councillor Wilson. Councillor Brown. Thank you. It's open for debate. If there be no debate, I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Item number 7 on page 25. Adoption of the Climate Change and Sustainability Strategy 2025. Welcome, Femke. Mark and Tony. Anything further to add to the report or speak to the report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one comment. There's a small error in the number mentioned on page 46 in the little text box that refers to did you know? And it says that China's emissions are 14,67, but it should be 14,167. So it's just a number correction.
Okay, see that. Thank you. Amended. Further, any questions, councillors? Councillor Hooper?
That same set of numbers, there's a comma where there should be a point regarding the New Zealand emissions too. It's 81.08.
Yeah, we'll pick that up. Thank you.
Councillor Cameron?
I had a text from Lynette Lovett, who's, I don't know when to ask these questions or not. Can I ask them on her behalf or not?
Not really. You could ask him yourself, not on behalf of anyone. If you have a question. Yeah. Unless it was your question, you could. Councillor Wilson?
On page 45, I think no, not 45, go back, sorry, back one more, sorry, page 44. 44, it says, halfway down the page, it says, at the same time, the impacts of climate change in terms of increased flooding, increased drought, loss of biodiversity, and so on. I'm just interested to see what "and so on" means. It's quite open-ended. Does it means that things carry on forever, or that it's just, I just felt it was quite open-ended. It's an unusual term to have, I thought, "and so on."
I mean, I guess it's a signal that we don't necessarily know the full impacts of climate change. So it's identifying the fact that, you know, there's certainly things that have been identified that will be an impact, but there'll be others that we don't know yet that will come out in the course of time.
Another question, if I may.
Yep.
Under sustainable water management, I was looking to, on page 47, 48, I was looking to see where we talked about how we, you know, looked after water and all that, but we haven't sort of mentioned storage as being a thing we would do for water, you know, because it's the obvious way you combat climate change is through storage of water. Or, you know, we talked about management, mineralisation and that sort of stuff. We never talked about storage as an outcome.
We do refer to it in the action plan. There's been a new, following the deliberations, there has been a new action added which refers specifically to the storage of water.
Councillor Hooper?
Thank you. Back to page 31, the strategic alignment. Can you explain under social wellbeing through impacts on society and inequities? Can you explain what that means, please?
I guess that's identifying the fact that climate change can impact different socioeconomic groups differently, depending on where they live and the impacts that might impact on them. So it's just identifying the fact that the impacts of climate change aren't the same for everyone.
Okay. Can I have another crack?
Yep.
Did a few more, if that's okay. From the mayor on page 37, you talk about intense heavy rain causing our rivers to flood on those grim days in May 2021 was unprecedented. Are you talking about the rainfall numbers, or is the unprecedented bit the flooding from our rivers?
Thank you. Through the chair, it was the rainfall because of the intensity of the rain that fell over a relatively short period of time.
What about back in 1980, I think it was, when that's what I read as the record amount in one day we're saying that's unprecedented, then is that, I just wonder where you got those figures from, really?
Yeah, that was based on the science of the time to do with that May 21 weather event.
Okay. I'll have a wee rest.
Just a question on page 41, and it's under what is sustainability. It took a year prior to the Paris Agreement in 15, United Nations adopted 17 Sustainable Development Goals. These are legally non-binding policy objectives agreed by the governments. What does the legally non-binding policy objectives mean?
I guess what that's saying is that legally we don't have to enforce them ultimately. So if it was legally binding, then a government would have to enforce it within law. But in terms of the United Nations, it's up to countries or agencies to apply them to their business or not.
So they can choose themselves whether
Correct.
they wish to
Yep.
or not. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm on page 60. With regards, I'm particularly concerned, and I know throughout this document there's been at pains to say that the monies will be allocated at the annual plan. When I read page 60, it's got where the action plan refers to a new budget, the sums are preliminary estimates and intended to highlight, and for some recurring. The recurring ones, once we pass or do not pass the first year, do the recurring ones carry on, or are they going to the annual plan every year as well? Like, how much are we approving at the annual plan?
It's true. Everything goes into the annual plan, so you can expect to see them on a recurring basis.
In the annual
But
plan?
in theory, a future council could stop that work and take it out.
That's great. And so when it comes to the annual plan, will these be highlighted as a new cost in the annual plan, so we have an opportunity to consider them at that time?
Yes, they will.
Okay, thank you.
And just further to that, just to reinforce what we discussed on the deliberation day, is we'll bring it together into a single business case, so they won't be scattered across budgets. You can actually see them in one spot.
Yeah, just following on from that, Councillor Cameron, on page 78, sorry, there's a 10 years of breakdown of costs, and that's not a given budget. It must come through the annual plan process or long-term plan process, as do all other plans and strategies that we hit those years, especially an Ashburton Domain Development Plan. We have the airport plan. Just because those numbers in those years is not a given budget, so we need to be mindful of that. It would probably be better for budgeting purposes if that plan, strategy, budgeting started early, probably later in the calendar year, so councillors could look at it and either dismiss them or let them go forward for consideration into the annual plan, instead of doing it at the same time. Maybe some advice to make it easier for councillors to give it more thought.
We will give that some thought as we prepare the next annual plan. One of the arguments in favour of bringing it together with everything else is it's a more connected way to consider all the priorities and objectives of the council when you're seeing them all together. Whereas if you start approving or disapproving some items in isolation, you may get to the finalisation of the plan and feel the plan doesn't quite work in total. So we would probably continue to aim to bring them at the same time as everything else, unless there was a strong will of council not to do that.
Yeah, obviously a new council will decide that, but hindsight is always a great thing. Doing the annual plan is as busy as it is with these other things coming in, they sometimes get missed go in as a given, where councillors sometimes don't get to discuss them, and sometimes the numbers can be quite small. When we do have the odd example of that. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. Probably leads on to my question. So we've got on page 78 as well, in year one, of the next LTP, we've got 5 million for the water meters. So is that already in our current LTP in year 4? Or is that a new cost that's been put in there for the year one of the next LTP?
I don't think the actual number is in there. We did signal in the infrastructure strategy it would be part of our conversation going forward, but we didn't actually put a number in. Although, to clarify that, it is in the water service delivery plan.
Right, okay, thank you.
Councillor Hooper.
Thank you. I've gone back to 39. The impact of changing climate on our district. I read all of that, and have we given any thought to some of the positives? Because all of that is negative. I just wondered if, from my understanding, dairy farmers locally have had an awesome last 12 months or so with weather, and it didn't seem overly balanced.
And we do reference the opportunities that the change in climate can bring. That's in another bit further down in the strategy.
Yeah, I realise further down, but just in that section there, around the impact, it's not all negative. There is some positive impact as well, but we just don't highlight it at all. So I just wonder if there's any thought of the positives.
I think there was reference in the strategy to the potential for some positives for some groups, but that on balance, climate change is negative for the planet and humankind and all the rest of it. So we're trying to, the strategy is as much about a call to action around that pathway as it is to seizing medium-term opportunities. So it is referenced, but not to the same extent as the issues that arise from it. We can change the emphasis if council so wishes.
Putting it out there. Another one, if I may. I just wondered why we were we continued to do the per capita, and why we chose China to compare ourselves with, when the likes of Kuwait has a much closer population number, twice our emissions, 36.3 tonnes per capita, but yet we choose China. Why China, and why even per capita?
I think there's when you consider how small New Zealand is, and you consider the argument that we hear quite often, it doesn't matter what we do here because we're so tiny, then it's trying to draw a parallel to the places where that argument leads to. So you say, well, if the major industrial countries in China do something about it, well, that's when New Zealand should, because in the meantime we can't make any difference. So it's trying to reference the stats and the perception that what we do doesn't matter. And I'm always reminded in these conversations of the visit that we had from the Climate Change Commissioner, Rod Carr, to Council. And he said, when asked that very question, given New Zealand's size and the number of emissions, what's the point? And he said two things. Firstly, you don't know how impactful a pebble dropped in the pond can be. And secondly, you have to give future generations of New Zealanders hope. So if you're telling New Zealand doesn't matter what you do, it's up to someone else, then you're essentially saying it doesn't matter what you do. And all the discussions around caring about these types of issues sort of disappears on that basis. So I think the comparison is to try and at least make a reference to that argument that there's no point in doing anything. Yeah. Okay.
Councillor Wilson.
I would just probably talk further to Councillor Hooper's one to start with. I think we should have one that balances it out, the district's food production per capita as well, because that would show the carbon use, but food production per capita this district's got a very, very high output per capita, which does balance out some of the carbon, I would have thought. another couple of questions.
Yep.
The water metering, I agree with Councillor McMillan. I think we should be talking about, because if it's in our water services plan, we've almost through a fait accompli said we're going to do that if it's accepted. Therefore, we're actually resourcing it, aren't we? Rather than, the wording is page 62. It says plan. Well, we're planning and resourcing it almost now, aren't we? If we put it in our water services plan, haven't we?
Well, we're certainly signalling that we think it's likely and probably a good idea, but the water services delivery plan does not, in of itself, bind council to its own budgetary and resourcing decisions. So the argument would still hold that a future council will have to decide to do that.
Okay. And my page 66, my final question, the 24A, it goes to the whole thing has a bit educate the public about what they should do, and I find it I'm quite interested to know who would be educate and inform the community about scientifically proven methods on sustainable land use and soil conservation. Who would be scientifically doing this? I wouldn't have thought. I don't believe that regenerative is particularly scientifically proven, or some of the things there are. It's quite in your perception, who is scientifically proving it. So how do we, because we're actually stepping out of our lane quite a long way if we're going to be scientifically out there trying to pick winners and losers in that space. It sounds good in practice to inform everybody, but how do you, the people you're trying to inform probably know more about it than we do. So I'm just interested to know how do we pick who's the gatekeeper of the science, as it was.
Well, I mean, at this stage we don't know because we haven't sort of gone down the realm of what that might look like in terms of implementing it. But I guess ultimately we'd look at who might be out there and who would be the appropriate people to do that. And I guess ultimately this is about putting the information out there for people to make their own choices about how they choose to address climate change and giving that opportunity.
The Councillor Wilson, you made a comment about having some statistics on emissions per unit of food produced. Did you want to flow that through into the document, or was it just a comment you made? If you want to, well, then now's the time to add it.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, it's great to put a balance in because we get constantly told in our district that we're higher emitters per head of population, whereas someone who perhaps works in an office in a city says we're low population, but they eat the food that comes from here and do all the stuff. So our food production, some of the things we do here, we personally as people we may be high, but the output that we give means everybody else can potentially believe that they're low.
So that stat is available, so if council is agreeable, we can have that added in if you wish. Probably, yeah, okay. Council wants it, so we can find that stat on emissions per whatever food production. I know there's one there for milk solids, I know that, but there'll be, it's just to give them the balance, really.
Yes, we'll look at it. Thank you.
Yeah. Phil?
While we're talking balance, I'd still like to push for some more comparisons, please, because I think the site that you guys send the link to, the climate change tracker, is really good. And if you have a look at New Zealand's graph compared to China's, they're completely different. China's is all about fossil fuels and industry, where ours is there's a whole lot of land use and forestry in there. So I'm concerned about our comparisons being ideal, or only having one, and it's China, and I think it's completely different. So I'd like maybe some more examples.
Could you narrow that?
Some more balance there, so we're not appearing to sort of scare people into making decisions.
Could you give us some guidance on which countries you would like to compare with?
Mongolia, Kuwait, Finland, Australia and Ireland, just off the top of my head.
Could you pick a top couple?
Sorry?
And pick a top couple you would like?
Well, Kuwait's 4.3 million population, so that's not a million miles away, and it's twice our emissions. Finland's similar population, but better emissions per capita, so there's a couple with some
Either way.
balance either way.
Okay, consider that. Yeah. Councillors, would you like another couple of comparisons put in? Populations the same size, and what was Finland comparable, and which way were they comparable? And emissions, right. Right. So it's easy enough to find those figures and add them in.
Or the other thing is that we get rid of per capita completely, and we're talking about how much is going into the bucket, the emissions bucket. But then that doesn't suit your argument before about the ripple, etc.
That's right. I mean, it's just trying to paint a context where the reason we're preparing a strategy, the reason that we're wanting to talk to people, the reason we want people to think about this issue is because of the actual issue, and rather than defeating any action at all on the basis that we're too small to matter, is the purpose of that comparison. But we hear the will, and we can add some other comparators, but it's to try and, I mean, in many ways it is a call to action. In many ways it is trying to alert our community to the existential issue that the planet faces around these sorts of issues, and the more you dice it, and the more you try and say we're okay here and someone else's problem, the less you have a free and frank discussion about the core of the issue.
Yeah, I agree and hear what you're saying, but also it was mentioned over that room at that side of the room about us staying in our lane and whether or not we've gone up to 1.2% total emissions in New Zealand, so Ashburton District Council is going to be a whole lot less than that, whether this is our boat to push or it's not central government. So I guess that will come when we get to annual plan time and associate some dollars.
Yeah, and perhaps, Mr Mayor, more a debate about whether you want a strategy at all than it is about the words in an introduction.
Okay, I think question time is over. Thank you. Good questioning there. So we've got a recommendation there that Council adopts the Climate Change and Sustainability Strategy 2025, revoking the previous one, and also just adding a few more stats on the milk food production in other countries to give a better comparison than just China only.
I'm happy to move that with those amendments.
With those, thank you. Councillor McMillan moved and Councillor Brown seconded. And it's open for debate. Do you respect the motion? Councillor Wilson.
Yep, I'll support it, but I'm very aware that we can't just spend lots of money and to make ourselves feel good. So when it comes to budget time, I'll be pretty critical of, as I put out with the scientific, it's easy to say that this will stop it all because it feels good. A lot of people do stuff to feel good, but we've got to stick to our core and stick to our lane as it was. And some of these costs I'll be quite critical of as it was, as to whether we spend or whether we don't spend.
Further speakers for Councillor McMillan.
Right,
Should we
reply.
save you to the end for Councillor Todd?
I just one brief comment, Mr. Chairman, is the adding water storage. I think is a no-brainer. With what's happening with climate change, we need to store as much water as we can. So I was pleased to see that added.
Yeah, I support the strategy, but then there's some dollars there lined up to be spent, which will go through the annual plan process. But I think we've got to see tangible results come out the other end, not just a talk fest. I think those days are gone. A lot of money's been spent over the years developing this and talking about that, but I don't know if our emissions have actually dropped. I don't know. But if this helps, then I'm supporting of it. So, Councillor McMillan, right to reply?
Yeah, thank you. I think there's been a lot of work done on this. We've had a lot of workshops. We've spent a lot of time, and it makes sense that we have combined the policy and plan into a strategy. And I think we will need to be careful about the money allocated and to look at that carefully in your plan, long-term plan time. But I think overall, lots of good work gone into this strategy.
Agree 100%. I'm going to put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Next item, number 8, and it's the key research annual resident survey. And welcome, Michael Hooke from Key Research. It's on page 82, councillors, and the actual results itself are on a separate item in Stella. There we go, it's on screen now. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. As introduced, my name is Michael Hooke. I'm the Director of Research at Key Research, and so this is the executive summary presentation of the recently completed resident satisfaction survey for the 24-25 year. So I will commence by just going through the objectives of the research survey, then I'll move on to the method that we employed, and then we'll have a look at some of the key findings. I've got a little bit of extra insight to share with you this time around before we move on to the conclusion itself. So the survey sets out to measure how satisfied residents are with all of the services and facilities that are provided by the council. So importantly, we want to measure how satisfied everyone is with performance over time, and particularly towards meeting any long-term plan objectives or any annual plan objectives which are in place. So this is now the 6th year that we've followed this particular method of data collection. It's proven very successful for us. You'll see we achieve a really robust analytical sample size of 754 with a good response rate as well. We've also started to develop a really nice sort of email database of residents who wish to participate in the surveys, and so we're getting a good response through that medium as well. So we use the electoral roll as our sample frame, so this is by far the best practice method we have for getting a really good representation of residents aged 18 plus across the district. And you'll see there that we're collecting the data in 4 waves across the year, so that's in order to account for any seasonality that may be at play, but also for any topical issues as well. So moving on to have a look at some of the key findings then. So this is part of a really good news story which we have to share this year. So this is the key performance indicator here. So this is satisfaction with the overall performance of the council, and you'll see again a nice little lift, and we've seen over the last 3 consecutive surveys lifts in residents' perceptions of the overall performance of the council. So a nice trend line developing there. If we move to the attributes that we've measured, so we measure 61 attributes in total, so 28 of those represented, they illustrated some level of improvement, 18 decline in terms of perception of performance. These are the ones which are showing the greatest level of improvement here, and encouragingly we see several related to the roading network. And you'll be aware from previous surveys that perception of the roading network has quite an influence upon a resident's perception of overall performance. So where we see the lifts there, we're going to see lifts in terms of overall perception of performance as well. And so we looked across some of these big improvements to see if we could find, were there particular subgroups in terms of demographic characteristics or geographic characteristics which might be driving that overall performance rating up. The one we've highlighted here is quite interesting. It's to do with the level of influence over council decision making amongst a group 18 to 34-year-olds who are typically challenged in terms of their levels of satisfaction with their local council. So that's a really encouraging metric for us to illustrate there. Conversely, moving to the biggest decreases in, not a lot to see here really. So you'll see there the largest decreases are actually fairly minor, minus 3 percentage points. If we go now look at some of the key sort of services and facilities which are provided by the council. So this is satisfaction with the drinking water supply. So we see the Ashburton district, the required district there, reporting really stable levels of perception of performance. And encouragingly, we again see a nice lift for those who are on the Methven water supply after what has been a number of challenging years there. So another piece of good news out of the survey. So these are the areas which are returning the highest levels of performance. And not too much to report here. These are the services or facilities which would typically be shown on this particular chart, although I would point out contact with council through social media. So that has popped up onto this chart. It hasn't been there before. So we see a 6 percentage point improvement in levels of performance there. And we also see a greater number of residents engaging with the council via that particular medium. We asked a question in the questionnaire for those who stated that they were dissatisfied with the council to let us know why. And almost everybody who said they were dissatisfied did leave a comment. Not surprisingly, the biggest response here is to do with the roading network again. That is fairly typical. It's what we refer to as a default attribute. One thing I would point out, I mentioned this a couple of times in the presentation, is that aspects or attributes to do with value for money are coming into the comment section more in this particular survey. And so we see here rates are too high or we get nothing for our rates has popped up to be the second most mentioned there for those who would be dissatisfied with the council's overall performance. Another piece of exceptionally good news here. So this is the trend line for performance or perceptions of performance with the roading network. You'll see there for unsealed roads, really close to the LTP target there, and at a level that we haven't seen since 2012. Sealed roads as well, showing the same sort of trend line. So really encouraging story to be told. You will note, however, and I've illustrated this in previous years, the difference between residents who live in the township and those who live in the rest of the district. So if you live in the town, you're much more likely to be satisfied than that with the roading network than if you don't live in the Ashburton Township. Rubbish and recycling here, so really stable levels of performance with the waste management services provided by the council year on year. We actually see a little lift in terms of satisfaction with the rate spent over the previous 12-month period. EA Network Centre always returns really good levels of satisfaction and performance, continuing to do so. We ask a question in the questionnaire, what should the Ashburton Council spend more on? And we see there by far the greatest responses pertaining to the roading network as well. Not altogether a bad response because, as I've said earlier, that is what we refer to as a default attribute. But again, we see the value for money attribute popping up into this response set as well. In terms of spending less, again, around rates and value for money is the highest response recorded for that particular question. Residents in the district are generally pretty happy with their quality of life, and it is represented in these kind of high-level attributes which we measure as well. 96% of respondents saying that Ashburton District is a great place to live. Again, very similar levels of performance in terms of perceptions of living in Ashburton compared to 3 years ago. So we looked at differences between those who live in the township and those who are living in the rest of the district. Sealed roads is the main point of difference here. See that 11 percentage point difference. Not a lot else besides the roading network driving any differences there. However, when we looked at age group, and this is something to be cognizant of, and this is a really similar pattern. We measure 20 councils across New Zealand, and this particular pattern is emerging for pretty much all of our clients, whereby the younger cohort are often less satisfied and significantly less satisfied. You'll see here overall performance, 25 percentage point difference between those aged 18 to 34. In this case, we're measuring against the highest age bracket that we have for Ashburton, which is 75 plus. So interesting findings. So in conclusion then, really good lift in the overall performance again. So we see that the quality of roads is having quite a significant impact upon that. Really good improvements of levels of perceptions close to the LTP targets, but we do of course see those differences between urban and rural residents. Roading is a key driver, as I have mentioned. We see the same trend line since 2019 where the overall performance metrics started to rise. At the same time that the perceptions of the roading network started to rise, and if we overlaid them, we'd see that nice trajectory occurring. I pointed out there the age differences. 18 to 34-year-olds are a lot less satisfied than your elderly residents. And as I mentioned, value for money comments are starting to appear more in the comments section of the questionnaire. So thank you. Happy to take any questions or comments.
Thanks, Michael. It's a really good presentation
Thank
on
you.
our survey. 4 questions come on. I'll just ask one myself. At roading, it's pleasing to see it's pointing up, which is great. Roading is one of the biggest spends that this council spends money on, and we've been focusing on it for some years, and to finally see it turning is good news. I just also thinking you do 4 waves of the survey through the year, and one of those waves is in June, July, which is the winter time. So if you picked roading in that that period, is it similar to the rest of the year, or is it worse then? Because winter seems to be the worst time for roads. Is there something noticeable in that period?
It's actually a really good question. We used to see quite a difference in what we called the more stressful months, which would be summer and winter in terms of perceptions of roading network, and perceptions would be lower in those months. But this time around, the differences are not great across each of the 4 ways from the roading network.
Good, thank you. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. My question's on roading as well. So there's a few people in our community who don't realise that, say, the road from Ashburton to Methven is NZTA. So is that explained during the survey, or is it just, are you satisfied with our roads? And if someone's just hit a pothole on that State Highway 77 and goes, no, I'm not, is that considered in the survey? How does that work?
We're just asking about the quality of the roading network in general.
Yeah.
So we're not separating out whether or not they may or may not be council controlled roads.
Thank you.
Councillor Hooper.
Thank you. Thanks for the report, Michael. The response rate, 13%, you said that's good. That seems awfully not good. Is that a comparison to other councils around the country as far as response rate goes?
Yes, yeah. So it would be not the best response rate that we're able to achieve, but it is good, and it compares favourably with other councils. So some councils may be just in the high single digits, and others may be a bit higher at about 15%. But it is good. We're giving a lot of residents the opportunity to participate, which is the main thing.
So yeah, at 13%, you're sort of around the 7,000. That's the net you're casting out.
Yeah, we sent 5,500 invites via the electoral roll postal method, but don't forget that we also relied on the email database, which we've built over time to contribute to the total sample size.
Leads to my next question, if I may, quickly. And your success rate with email was much better. Is that going to be more of a focus for you going forward?
Yes.
Therefore bring down the costs for council?
Correct. Yes and no. You'll see there that we have identified with 760 residents are now on our email database who have said that they would like to participate in market research surveys. But in saying that, the response rate was 28%. So we still have to rely on going to the broader population in order to achieve the sample size that we have to. So the answer to your question is yes and no. So we will be relying on that, but we will have to go further to make sure that we get the representation that we need.
Councillor Wilson.
I'll be interested to understand with the improvement in roads, because we've got 2 stories going on, and I'd concur with Councillor McMillan saying that we should be trying to identify if people see the sealed network as being the state highway versus the local roads, because I'm sure there's a huge confusion between the two. When we've spent a lot extra, we've done, if you look on page number 103, we've done 7.7% of our resealing the roads. We've done a huge amount extra, and I thought that might have given us a bit of a lift in the sealed. And I'd be interested to understand if has you ever done any work on the relationship between shingle applied to the roads and the response to how people see the shingle roads, because we've applied more shingle and we get an increased response. It's actually not really rocket science to me. I'm wondering if there's been a correlation done there.
Firstly, there was a really good lift in terms of perceptions of the sealed roading network. We haven't done any specific studies around differences in perception of the roading quality as per shingle applied.
And my last question is, could you, the graph you brought up, it had council, the result from council provided water. There was one other water. What is the other water group? We're talking about meth fins improved, but there was one that's other.
Yeah, that's a good question. Other is unidentified. So I'm actually unsure if maybe you might be able to help me out, Mark. You might have come to the table for that one. So in the questionnaire, it simply says other.
Private suppliers.
Councillor Ellis?
Thank you. I assume some of those people who answered will be on private suppliers that aren't council controlled, maybe.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. The 18 to 34-year-olds that are a lot more unhappy with us than the older age bracket. Is that a trend through the country, and can you put your finger on a reason why that may be?
Yes, it is a trend. Through many of the councils that we work for are experiencing this. Some aren't. However, I can make comments, but I can't quantify or verify those comments as to why they may be. But I think if you look out into society at this point in time, there's an awful lot of stresses going on, which are probably magnified for that group more than they are for elderly age groups.
Thank you.
Councillor Bryan?
Thank you. Michael, just a question as well from me. It's going quite nice. So can we compare with other districts? Are we better or worse?
So of the 20 councils that we measure, 39% improved their performance ratings over the past 12 months. So over half of them actually declined their overall satisfaction ratings. So Ashburton sits in a good place in terms of continuing to improve. A number of councils didn't improve.
Thank you.
Councillor McMillan, when Councillor Bryan goes off.
Here we go. Thank you. Just another quick question. I'm just looking at the page that has use of facilities, and you've obviously asked them which facilities have you used. Is there any chance, I don't know how often you switch up the questions, but is there any chance about we could add like other halls, or because we've got Ashburton Domain, public toilet, library, EA Networks, playgrounds, event centre, art gallery and museum, but there's nothing for the Mount Hutt Memorial Hall, the Tynwald Hall, the Rakai Hall, which I'm sure a lot of people do actually use, and it would be quite nice to just, I know it would be a bit of yeah, right. Sorry, Tony's got her hand up over there.
Hamish? Tony? Tony?
Thank you, through the chair. Look, you can add as many questions in as you like to a survey, but when you drive the size of a survey up, then generally speaking your response rate goes down. The underpinning of the survey questions is largely in line with the LTP KPIs, so the performance metrics that we're measuring. It would be could be more challenging to get a representative sample when it's defined to such a, while the Mount Hutt Memorial Hall, for example, is a well-used facility in Methven, actually being able to talk to enough people that have used the facility in the last 12 months to understand their satisfaction with that might be quite challenging to get within the sample size that we're running right now.
Okay, and if you clumped all the halls together, you're probably not getting a realistic...
Probably not going to be terribly meaningful.
No,
yeah.
Okay.
And just to clarify on that, for this year, we have signed off the survey for this current financial year 25-26, but we should certainly consider it for the next financial year.
Councillor Cameron?
Oh, thank you. I'm looking at suggested priority services and facilities on page 11 of the actual document. And it's got a list there. Did everybody answer every question? Like, how many people answered each question? So do we know the relative significance per question, I suppose?
Yes, the answer is yes, we do know how many people answer the question. There should be is there an N equals number at the bottom of the page, which will give you an indication of the sample size?
See. Oh, yes, there is. It's
yeah,
a very small
yeah,
font.
Yeah, sorry.
There is.
So that is the number of people who responded to that
Or
question.
65. Because if it wasn't reaching statistical significance, presumably it wouldn't be in the report. Is that correct?
No, we're representing all of the feedback.
Yeah.
What will happen, of course, is that people will choose not to answer particular questions. So they'll just go straight over the top of that. So you'll see that 465 of those who left a comment or provided a comment
On
to
that
that question.
particular
On that
question.
particular question,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Todd?
Thank you. I found it quite interesting when you read the report. I think the council's in a bit of a conundrum, really, is that some people want more spent on roads, but the rates are too dear. So there's a conflict between wants and against the costs, isn't there? That's the predicament that all councils are in, that the people want more money spent, but they don't want to pay for it, is the big issue.
It's a really fascinating comment, because we see that for most of our other clients, that value for money component, when we do our driver analysis, weighs very heavily on that overall performance rating, but we don't see it here, which is quite fascinating. That's the reason why I pointed out a couple of times the influence of perception of the roading network appears to be more significant than perceptions of whether or not there's value for money. So that's quite an interesting answer.
Like we spent an extra $1 million into unsubsidised roading this year, and you think we should be reaping the benefits of that, but it's very, very difficult to get a big uplift in that response.
Yeah, I know. I would say that the improvements that you are seeing in the overall performance rating should actually be celebrated. It mightn't look like much, but I can tell you from what we see for a lot of other councils across the countryside, you're in a pretty good position.
Thank you, Michael. Doesn't look like there's any more questions, so thanks very much for presenting that report. And no doubt we'll be back in a year's time to present the next fund next year, and hopefully we'll see roading on that direct trajectory heading upwards like we have. So thank you and well done.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep. Going to move in a second at that we received the 24-25 annual resident survey report. Councillor Ellis, Councillor Brown. Put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. It's carried. Thank you. Next item is number 9, end of year non-financial performance reporting. Emily, Mark and Tony, welcome. Anything further to add, or should we just go through the report?
Yeah, thanks. Nothing further to add.
Okay, to get through the report, I think we might take it in sections. And the first one is on page 96, infrastructure services, 3.1.1 drinking water. Any comments, questions on that? Councillor Wilson.
We obviously see that we haven't met a lot of our targets, which are, if I look at one, turbidity seems to be one. Probably we've heard a few times that we've been waiting on some infrastructure to go in. Do we consider, once we've got that infrastructure up and running, which is being done right now, and things, we will actually improve those quite significant?
Yes, that's part of the answer. So as we've been saying to the Three Waters Committee, that there is some infrastructure planned and currently being completed that will improve our compliance. But there's a raft of other things that we have to do in relation to record keeping, monitoring, resourcing, analysing, that will continue to apply to achieve really high compliance. So the infrastructure spend is only part of the compliance story.
But it would be safe to say that the drinking water is safe, very safe to drink. These are the next raft of regulations that are coming through from the government. Is that what's causing this, or is it?
Oh, yes, I think that's fair. I mean, our focus has been to have compliant water supplies. And so that's not only infrastructure, it's a whole host of other monitoring, reporting mechanisms. And the committee and council have heard that repeatedly over the last 12 months or so.
Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. Yes, I read those turbidity ones as it actually, the water wasn't the problem. It was the actual information gathering that wasn't done at the correct frequencies. So that was the problem.
So that's something that can be tidied up internally. Yeah. For questions on drinking water, we'll move to wastewater on page 100. Move on to stock water, page 102. Oh, sorry, missed this. 101, stormwater. Stock water. 103 is on transportation. Councillor Wilson.
I'm just trying to understand. So the comments made, are they comments by us or by the public?
Through the chair, the comments made by our staff.
So I'm interested to see if I look at residents are satisfied with council's unsealed roads. We've got 30% noted grading is not done soon enough. So is that the people noting saying it's not done soon enough, and we're saying it is done soon enough, or what are we saying to refute that or to?
So through the chair, that's taken from the annual resident survey. So when they said they were dissatisfied, that's the comment they left. So 30% of those who were dissatisfied said noted grading is not done soon enough, etc.
So I'm just understanding, why don't we come back and say, but it is done, and we can, I see a comment, but I'm trying to understand, well, is it true or is it not true? How do I understand that?
The person making the comment believes it to be true. The issue here is we're trying to give you a report against the measure. So in that case, the measure is resident satisfaction. So our aim is 70%. We made a lift to 63, therefore it doesn't comply with the target. And then some of those comments are what was expressed as to, I guess, why we haven't quite got there yet. And then you take that with all the wisdom you bear and believe it to be true or don't believe it to be true. But that's the information that's coming from the residents.
Page 105, waste reduction and recovery. Councillor Will.
Thank you. Just a question on the volume of glass collected. Is that a trend throughout New Zealand that there's not as much glass sent out to the recycling, or more people using cans, or how?
Yeah, through the chair, I don't know. I'd have to follow up on that and what other councils are experiencing.
It may be worth just looking at that, because it may not just be our council that is not meeting that requirement.
Councillor Cameron.
Yeah, I was thinking that too, as a follow-on from Councillor McMillan. Statistically, I think in New Zealand we're drinking less wine and things, aren't we, that traditionally come in glass. So I wonder if that's a national trend. Like, does this measure need to be reviewed, is my question, I suppose.
The measure is about increasing the amount of recycling. So in the end, you won't be able to do that because you'll be recycling everything and you won't be able to continue to grow it. And we're not saying that's the case here, but just think about what the measure is. The measure is growing recycling. And in this particular case, that hasn't happened, and there could be a host of reasons for that that aren't. And we can all, take an anecdotal kind of assumption about why that might be, but it's very hard to know without doing a whole piece of research on that. Yeah.
Councillor Hooper?
Thank you. Comments like the poor attitude and recycling inspectors are rude. At what point do we actually talk to our inspectors and say, hey, look, this is a trend. We've had X amount of percent come back to us and say that you guys are rude. What's going on? I mean, obviously people aren't going to be happy when they've had their bin taken away or whatever. But do you see my question?
I absolutely understand the question. The recycling and the examination of what's in your recycling bin is a matter of high tension for council contractors and members of the public, and it's a matter of high contention and tension right across New Zealand. So people don't like having their stuff examined and told that there is inappropriate material in the bin. And do our contractors generally do a very good job? Yes, they do. And from time to time, I'm sure that high tension situation, might cause us all to reflect on the things that were said in that exchange. But it is not an easy job. It is not a job that the community welcomes, and there are some difficulties in doing that. So, yes, we examine all the complaints we get about the contractors' behaviour. We drill into all of those and make sure that we're doing the very best we can, and the behaviour standards of our contractors is what we would all expect and be proud of. But it isn't an easy environment that they are working in.
Yep, I'm not. I was just wondering whether or not we would say to them, "Hey, look, this has come through again. Just so it's on your radar. It's being mentioned again, and probably nothing more than that at that level."
Yeah, we deal with each of the complaints that we receive along those lines. Yeah.
Over the page 106, public services and community governance and decision making, democracy. Community grants and funding. Economic development and commercial activities. Page 107. .2.3 community services. Lots of green text there, which is good. 3.2.4 parks and open spaces. Page 109, recreation facilities. Art gallery. Just a question on the art gallery. We didn't meet an exhibition target there. It was not met due to budget constraints. Were we aware of the budget constraints when we did the budget? Sarah?
Through the chair, freight costs have gone up significantly, and with touring exhibitions, depending on what they were and the size, that has had a big impact to their costs. And the current touring exhibition that is there at the moment is a perfect example of getting a really important and significant touring show, but it does come with more costs than local shows. So sometimes we have to juggle that.
Thank you. Page 110, Ashburton Library.
I've just got a question on the activity and the program sessions. The teens result is sort of double the target, and the adults result is almost 4 times the target. So do we need to bump up those numbers, or is it just an unusually busy year for activities?
through the chair. Yes, when we are able to change our LTP targets, we will be changing them to reflect what the practice was. These targets were set prior to moving into Te Whare Whakateri, so we didn't know what we didn't know. We're really pleased with the results we have done, have achieved, and in saying that there is only so many hours and staff resourcing and rooms, so I wouldn't expect to see year on year that growth, because there are restraints in size and capacity, but yes, a more realistic target should be set.
Thank you. Yeah, Network Centre. Tipped over 512,000 visitors or users, and users/users, which is good. So page 3.3, regulatory services, on page 112, building regulation. District planning. Oh, Richard.
The building regulation one, is the within the few done not within the 20 days, is that acceptable still, or should we be aiming for 100% just as a matter of principle as it was in this course?
Our target is 100%.
Are we looking to, have we alleviated where those problems have happened, or have we solved that problem that we haven't got to 100?
We report every activity briefing on how the year is tracking, and you can see in the case of the building consents, there's just a handful that you miss, and then you can't get it back for the year. So it's a little bit where we're heading with water. You miss one test, you won't be. That's it for the year in terms of 100% compliance. So that's why we produced those numbers, to put some context around a red cross. But our aim is to always meet our obligations to the 20 days.
Councillor Ellis.
And you've got the average time frame of 13 days there for the first one. It'd be quite nice to know the average time frame of the ones that went over, because it might only be 1 day and then it's a failure. But suddenly, if that was also 13 days, there is a problem there. But if it was 1 or 2 days, it's
Yeah, I know we have that information somewhere. I've seen reference to that on a more cyclical basis, so I'm sure we can add that commentary as well.
I think the question does get asked at activity briefings, and it can be only a day or two late, but not hugely over. But it's still not 100% as the regulations dictate.
And the reason we put the average number of days for those that are processed on time is to show that in average we're well under the legal limit of 20 days. Where one slips over, that makes it non-compliant.
And it may also determine on what how technical the building is and how much time it takes to go through the process. District planning. Emergency management. Land information memorandums. Regulatory compliance. Over the page, plan and progress report. Progress update, council plans 3.1, Ashburton Airport Development Plan. .2 Ashburton Domain Development Plan. 3.3, Councillor Wilson.
Domain development plan, it was done before this term of council, it was done the last term of council. So again, I'd just like to stress that when we do our budgets, it'll be, because once you get 6 years out and just dropping in and happening is what, I see, that's sort of how it feels, it's just happening because it was in year 6, so it happens in year 6. It'd be great to give it a bit more rigour around that as to what we're looking to do rather than it just be put in the budget and we've actually got to find it in the budget rather than it be signalled that it's actually going in the budget, if you understand.
Yes, we're thinking about how we highlight those matters. I mean, new expenditure requires a business case over $50,000. So if there's a new item in the plan that's dropping in because of that plan, then it's still subject to a business case regime for the purposes of the annual plan. So we think most of the work that's of that size will be highlighted through existing processes, but we take the point around how we can make sure council's comfortable they've got all the information they need in signing off the annual plan.
And just in this list of things here, signage is not one of these lists, yet there was some signage work done in the domain. Looks very good, but it wasn't highlighted to us that it was being done.
Because of the size of the expenditure didn't trigger the business case.
Yeah, I think the size of the expenditure is not, the council's thinking is not warranted the size. They'd like to see them. Sometimes it's the small things that cause the biggest grief.
That's right, and that's the balance, because the smaller the issue, the more of them there are, and the ability to highlight absolutely everything is a challenge, as you would imagine.
So hence it might take a day before budget, just before budget starts, where they are highlighted and made apparent that they are there. Councillor Hooke.
Thank you. On the bridges, I see the existing bridge was completed by another bridge was upgraded by a community group. Is that something that we sort of put the feelers out for quite a bit and see if we can't get some of our local lines, etc., to have some input and cop up some readies for?
Yes, it is something we do encourage and work with people, but obviously we're working very closely with our staff. Yep.
Thanks.
Page 124, Climate Resilience Plan. The old one. Anything on those pages up to 128?
I've just got a question on some page 130, and it's just around supporting further scientific research and water quality monitoring. So I guess that's on Lake Clearwater and I guess on Lake Kemp as well. And it says supporters coming from the Otu Wharekai working group. Do we ever get any reports or updates from that group? I know there's no councillors on it, but there's obviously staff on that group, just to tell us how that's progressing. How does that filter through to us?
It doesn't come in the activity briefings. I'm not sure what staff members are.
Yeah, I think that comes through open spaces, through Christian in his activity briefings.
Okay.
Take note of it there.
Yeah, I haven't picked that up, so thank you.
Yeah, perhaps you go back through your last briefing, and if there's not enough detail there, you could, if you've been chair of that group, you could ask for a little bit more information, if it's not sufficient. Page 130, which are on the thing, we've got the words in there NA, or the letters NA, but there's no, down the bottom, no NA down the bottom. What is NA meaning is what I'm getting at. It's only within budget.
Through the chair, I'd say there's probably no budget implications. That top one in particular, it says there's no plans to do that action, so there would be no budget.
So it's not applicable, is that what it's saying? So should there be a thing down the bottom to say NA is not applicable?
Yep, we can add that in.
Just for clarity. Is it, Russell?
Page 132, the boundary and property encroachment issues. I see when our inspectors are up there doing something else, they then have another look around. I mean, I remember when we had a large workshop on this issue, and one of the outcomes was council, I thought, resolved to sell some extra sections up there to help fund this project. I mean, at the end of the day, council owns the land, and if people are encroaching on other people's land, it's an issue that needs sorting. So it needs a deadline on it, I suppose I'm saying. It seems to be happening very piecemeal.
I think that is true, because it is a wicked problem, and there's, I imagine, no deadline you can set that we will achieve. It's a very complicated and passionate area of work, and we are probably doing relatively little with it because of that. If council wishes to progress that in any meaningful way, we probably should have a separate conversation about how we might approach that and what it might look like and how we would resource and actually do it. My own recollection is the suggestion that we sell some more land to fund it was met with significant opposition locally, and as far as I'm aware, that isn't proceeding either. So it's there's a big discussion in that item, I think.
I think Council did give direction back, it's a few years, that sections were to be sold, and the whole settlement was to be resurveyed, because you can't move the houses, but you can move the lines, and it has stalled for some reason. So maybe a piece of work that you can
Let
refresh
us
yourself on.
take it up with the new council to see what their appetite is for progressing that complex work.
Councillor Hooper.
Thank you. Question's been asked. Is there any chance of a relaxing of dog rules there? I see where the animal control contractor visits the area. Understanding was that when the land was gifted, there was sheep surrounding it. Maybe not so much now, and the residents asked if they could stay on property.
The council's policy position is no. In the event that council wished to revisit that, you would need to find a way to re-examine that issue for all the reasons why the answer is no, and it's a broader issue from my memory than sheep. It's the fragile nature of the entire environment and the biodiversity issues that occupy that environment that is the reason for no dogs. I don't think it's related to farm animals. But at some point, council might want to revisit that and have the full discussion.
Thank you. Page 135, Ashburton Town Centre Parking Management Plan.
I draw everybody's attention to item number 13, which is on page 137, around consider the implementation of a system to continuously monitor car park occupancy. That sounds innocuous and it's not being processed, but I think if you talk to the people of, I think it's Upper Hutt, that have the cars that drive around in continuous motoring, their parking fees have gone up from like 100 to 300,000, and it would be Ashburton. I think we want to, if we look to automate, it sounds very good, but it's actually a massive revenue change because it's AI automation, snaps, can monitor what wafts and registration and tyre, all sorts of stuff. But also I think we should be looking at connecting that with the business owners, because if we do that, no one would park on the street that could be monitored like that, because it would be, so I think it doesn't look like much there, but it's a much bigger thing than it looks, I think. I'd just like to flag that as one of my major concerns. It's not
concern. I can tell you we are having conversations about that same process here, and people parking legally won't attract any fines or infringement notices at all. So, but no decision's yet reached on how we might approach the future of parking.
I would put it that the current bylaws and laws where it has a certain amount of time had built into them almost, so as a matter of fairness, that you had a bit of room and there was a bit of room to move, but as soon as you go to automated, it becomes 1 second over, you're caught. So I think it needs a rethink if you're going to go the automated way, because it's a change in how the thing has been done in the past.
Over's over.
Actually, we've gone away from that. We had those sensors in the ground that signalled when the 1 hour was up, and the parking meter knew exactly where the car was that was over its time, and for some reason did away with those in the town centre redevelopment.
Mr. Mayor, there are a range of ways in which councils across New Zealand and the world are moving to ensure that everybody gets fair access to a park, because that's what parking enforcement is. It's to prevent people taking a park for longer than they should, so that actually someone else, when they come along to do their chores, can get access to the park. So there are a whole raft of ways in which councils are examining the way they approach that enforcement, and we are having conversations here around how we might do it in the future as well. But as I say, early days, no decisions, but certainly under active consideration.
Might be timely to bring it up now. We're redeveloping the Polytech site as we speak. The buildings are coming down. It's going to be shingled car park. We haven't, as council, decided whether there'll be a charging regime there or not. So perhaps you need to turn your mind and bring paper, probably be to new council, as to what the parking arrangements will be in that area. And there's probably also could be tied up with that as the two sections either side of the fire station, which are free parking all day at the moment. Should they remain at that or not? I think there's a piece of work there that could be done to, you've spent some money at the Polytech site to regain some of that revenue back again.
Yep, no, we make a note of that and bring something to council to resolve what parking enforcement should be on those parks.
Yep. When is it likely that the Polytech site will be available? Do you know yet?
No, I'd have to refer to someone in the property department. I'm just not sure. We'll find that out by the end of today, though, and let you know.
Okay, yep. So you can get it programmed. Yep. With 3.6 waste minimisation, if there's no more on parking. Ashburton District Parking Strategy. This is obviously the whole district, not just the town centre.
Just a question. How does the number of taxi stands be decided in I guess, Ashburton CBD?
Through the chair, my understanding is that there was discussion at the time of the last parking strategy being developed. We're coming up to next year doing another review, so that will be part of the discussion that we have with the community about and the assessments that we do about whether it's still appropriate and whether changes should be made.
Thank you.
(4.2) Biodiversity Strategy, page 142. questions? Notice on page 149, under surface water strategy, planting at Mill Creek and Carter's Creek was completed. I think the bylaw you just passed forbids those plantings. No 6 metre gap. Perhaps they need to be reviewed. 4.3 Economic Development Strategy. Councillor Milne.
Thank you. Page 151, under the feasibility study for the Innovation Centre and Learning Hub. So is the budget, so the budget in year 2 of the LTP, is that for the feasibility study? Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, it is. It's allocated for that at this time.
So that will be completed by June next year, is that correct?
There's a proposal potentially to come back to council to request reallocation of that funding in down the line.
Page 154, 2.B.1, establish a business leadership group. I just wonder who the members of that are. How would we find that out? Page 154, 2.B.1, and the action.
Through the chair, I've found a list of members of the group, which I believe have met once late last year or early this year. They're made up of various business owners and managers within the district, as well as some industry managers like Chamber of Commerce, Business Canterbury, Master Builders, as a representation of the different sectors across Mid Canterbury.
It's planned to keep that going or not?
Yes, there's been a bit of a sort of review on all of the things that have come into my camp, and that is something that will be continued. I can get you a list of the people that have been involved so far.
I'm fine unless councillors want it. Councillor,
Just to follow on from that, we did have a business leaders in COVID, didn't we? Didn't you meet with? Yeah,
we did over that COVID.
Is this a sort of continuation of that? Do you think?
Possibly.
I believe so.
Yeah, I think some of the membership is the same, but the COVID Economic Advisory Group
Yes.
disbanded after COVID, and then this group has sprung up, but some of the membership I think is the same. Yeah.
So it would be good to see that and how that membership was arranged. And
shall we send those names out to councillors? Is that what we're here? Yeah, okay.
Another question from me.
Yep.
Page 156, under the 3.C.3, establish the Highway 72 collaborative group, and then you've got promote it. So that's because we've also got the Dark Sky initiative as well. So was that Highway 72 group with obviously Selwyn and Waimakariri, and I don't think it goes as far as Haranui, but those councils, was that anything to do with the Dark Sky initiative as well, or was that just a tourist, so getting people on 72?
And through the chair, the Selwyn, Waimakariri and Ashburton councils met on various things, including Inland Scenic Route 72. The Dark Sky program as a trail wasn't one of the items on the agenda. That was a wider discussion that Christchurch NZ coordinated, which did not seem to gain a lot of traction as a trail attraction, but potentially individual spots instead. The Inland Scenic Route 72 is of varying priorities for those councils involved, so it hasn't progressed very far.
And just a further question, I mean, 72 doesn't actually go through any townships in our district anyway, so, I don't.
Mayfield?
Well, it possibly goes through Mayfield. Oh, well, you
No,
Mount
that's not, it's an ARG, no.
Yeah.
Councillor Cameron?
3.B.1, page 156, talking about research to understand what we are known for and what the district has to offer, and it's got that that's still in progress, and then it's got that is not within budget. Can you help me understand that? I would have thought we're doing a lot of advertising that I've seen on the internet and things to show what our district has to offer and what we do. So I understand it's evolving as new things come along, but what we should possibly know that before we do our advertising. Would that be fair? And what's in budget, not in budget? And
Thank you, through the chair. I suppose to answer the first question, yes, a small amount of research was undertaken with operational budget. I think it was around $5,000. No additional budget was ever considered for a full research topic to take place of residents and people outside of the district to understand who and what we are. And there is anecdotal work going on all of the time gathering that information, but it would be good to actually have some formal research completed. In terms of the promotions that are happening, the target audiences are very much based around the traveller experiences that Tourism New Zealand are giving us the demographics for. So we're breaking those into those specific groups looking to come for those activities that we have in our district.
okay, thank you. So in order to meet this objective, in order to achieve it, do we need more budget? Is that what it's essentially saying?
Correct.
Yes.
So will that come to then your plan, or how's that going to manifest?
In theory, yes, but there are many things like this where budgets, and we've talked about it most commonly with the Ashburton Domain Development Plan, where things are in a plan and then they don't necessarily get budget allocation and therefore they don't proceed. So this is one of a number of things that may or may not happen depending on pressure at resource allocation time.
Yeah, can I make another comment? Yep. Yeah. I feel that this is proceeding, but perhaps not without the information at the onset. If we're doing some promotional work and we haven't done the analysis as to what we're promoting, we might have the cart before the horse, perhaps. I'm just asking the question. Yeah.
Yeah, no, good question, but the truth is we can't do the research without the resources to do it.
You may have to reallocate, perhaps.
There's very little in this budget to reallocate. In the end, we have to get on and do the best we can with a relatively resource-constrained environment.
Yeah, and just one more comment to that, and following on from the Mayor, and I think that's what you have to do. But I think we don't want to be throwing away good money if it's not meeting the needs that we haven't assessed adequately. I'm not saying we are, I'm just asking the question. But perhaps that does need to come back to budget and we have to have a fiddle round and see if it can be fitted in or not and make a decision on that.
Thank you. Open Spaces Strategy, page 158.
Mr Mayor, just while there's a wee lull, I have received information that the Polytech car park should be available by late December.
Well, thank you.
Yes, this year.
So you'll have up until then to develop a charge regime or not?
Yes, indeed.
And how long to park for or not?
Yeah, I know Ian's made a note of it, so we'll be bringing that forward to the new council.
Yep. Councillor Wilson.
Page 14B. just development contributions in the rural environment. I'm just it says here progress underway and not overdue. Who's progressing that? And how does that? Because it was potentially started in 2020, and then it's sitting because that's. I'm just
Which, what are you at? 1.4B?
Yep, 1.4B.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, through the chair. So through the last development of financial contributions policy review for the leading into the 24 LTP, this was a part of the thinking, but it was quickly discounted by council.
So is it still part of the thinking, or is it?
Not at this stage, but council could direct us to bring it back onto the table if they chose to.
The comments there and the one above is to be considered or undertaken as part of the next district plan review. I'm thinking there won't be a district plan review with changes to RMA, so is that comment valid?
I think this will probably come out in the wash in terms of the work that's going into the new regime around development levies, and that will play through in the next year or two.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Thank you. Still open spaces, strategy. Moving through the pages. Nothing further there. 4.5, page 169. Active recreation and sport strategy. Working through those pages. Page 175, 4.6, the surface water strategy.
Just on the surface water strategy, Mr. Mayor, we've asked for a workshop on stormwater and surface water. Will that tie back into some of this when all that information comes through? And do we sort of have a date when that may happen with the stockwater race discussions that are going on out there as well, and those various things?
Thank you. Through the chair, I may not be able to answer the second part of that question, Councillor Ellis, with definite, but we'll find out for you the time frame there. With regard to the surface water strategy, this was actually our first line of thinking before we got to where we've got to now with our plan to exit out of stockwater. So we were actually having a discussion when we were doing and compiling this piece of work of how this has proceeded, where we are at now, and maybe once we see clearer what the path forward is, there may be parts of the strategy that become redundant or we no longer need the strategy. It was our first foray into where we've got to at this point.
Working through those pages of the surface water strategy. Page 185, walking and cycling strategy.
Thanks, Mayor.
Who's on? Councillor Todd.
Thank you. I can't remember what's been discussed before or not, but to promote a pedestrian island at the corner of Mill Street and West Street by the domain, going across to the overhead bridge. That's obviously State Highway 1 and NZTA's problem, but how do we promote the idea of an island there for people crossing? Because it is getting busier all the time. So have we discussed that before or not?
We have, Mr. McKen?
Yes, that has been raised several times over the years, and we continue to raise that with NZTA. They aren't happy to do so. They believe people can cross at the lights down just down here, and at this stage they don't have an appetite to have a crossing at that particular point. We keep on raising it and asking.
Councillor Wilson?
With the zonal, it's on 183, with the zonal committee being disbanded, has in the new regime, I'll call it, being mooted, is that being progressed, or is that stalled, or where's it at the moment?
Just waiting to try to tee up right as we speak a meeting with Chair of ECAN and Council. You might have received invites, and I think we might have just placemaker in the diary to get the ECAN side to align so we can all come in the room together and discuss what's going to happen going forward. We've got some dates in about 2 weeks' time to do that. Working with Chair Pauling on that.
Just on the walking and cycling strategy, walkers' safety when they go down Allen's Road down to that new Lockley complex, it does desperately need looking at that area. It's quite dangerous for those people walking. I've received a lot of comments on that just lately.
You're not the only one who's received comments there, Hamish.
I think many have received lots of comments on there. Our answer is that council simply hasn't allocated any budget for that job, and it was part of the low cost, low risk allocation changes from NZTA. When council put its unsubsidised roading money in, it decided to allocate that in a particular way, which does not include thus far a footpath for Allen's Road in that section. So we keep having to say to those people who come to us and talk about it is that perhaps your best avenue is to advocate through the annual plan for some resource allocation, but at the moment we have no plans and no budget to deal with that issue.
Councillor McMillan?
Thank you. I'm on page 186, right at the bottom there. Just investigate state highway issues for communities, and I see we've got, in conjunction with NZTA, providing a state highway 77 crossing at Methven. So that's something that has been requested for a long time. Where would the new request of having a safe crossing from Methven Central, which is going to be where Methven House moves to, across to the medical centre on Methven Chertsey Road, come in? Is that something that could be added to this, or I know that the community board have requested it, but how would that sort of progress any further?
Through the chair, that would come through as an annual plan submission,
Okay.
and then council staff could look at the costs of that and present that to council.
But in the meantime, through this plan, you've got it noted there that there is some work being done with NZTA to perhaps get some crossings, and not just in Methven, but in Tynwald and Rakaya.
Yes, yeah. So we do discuss these with them and see if there is any funding, see if we can get some additional funding, of which there's been very little to none. So it is really left for us and our budgeting and unsubsidised budget.
Perhaps you could kick that off at the road safety forum. You've got one left, I think. Yeah, could start there, work its way up. Just on that same page, 1.4a, develop a shared path on Racecourse Road. Has that not been done? We did footpath, underground at Power, and Cooper Channel. Is that what it was meaning?
Not sure the shared path. I know footpath has been put in there.
Yeah. don't know what the shared path piece is, but we'll work that out later.
But now I'll look into that.
Yeah. Councillor Wilson?
13C, it's improved cycling lane safety on Chalmers Ave. It says that that could be incorporated with 15E, which is the new bridge proposal. And I would have thought it should be incorporated because obviously the bridge only goes to the South Street corner effectively, but everybody knows there'll be a lot more traffic heading down Chalmers Ave, so some cycle safety or some consideration of it should be being incorporated now, not in the future as it was.
Yeah, that makes sense. We'll have a look at that.
That's correct. We have had discussions about that, and we will be incorporating whatever they do on the bridge and then extension and having something to tie into in a similar consistent way on Chalmers Ave when we do some upgrade work at Chalmers Ave.
Councillor Hooper?
Thank you. 2.1A, establishing wayfinding guidelines signage for urban cycling and key walking networks. Can you give me an example of where we might put some signage? It's just not hitting me what the recreational and rural paths integration, what examples we've got would be.
I can just assume it's just additional signs just to direct where exactly these paths are. Don't any more than that.
Page 190. No questions. Takes us to the end of the report. Lengthy but worthy. Lot achieved. Still some to achieve and still work in progress. So well done to all who've accomplished that. There's a recommendation there that we receive that report.
I'm happy to move.
That we received the end of year non-financial performance report 24-25 and we received the strategy and plan 24-25 progress report. Moved Liz and seconded Phil. Thank you all involved. I'll debate. Put the motion, all in favour please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. That takes us to the end of the open part of the meeting. So we might break for a cup of tea. I'll move that we move into committee. Second up. Councillor Hooper. All in favour please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. We'll break now for a cup of tea.